And now we have Olga. Hola, Olga. ¿Cómo estás? How are you?
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. I am very excited to stay with you today here. I hope that this space could be better, very important for you and have a lot of information about the cybersecurity risk management.
Thank you. Awesome. So before Olga starts, I wanted to invite everybody to continue learning about our risk management education and software by visiting our Pirani Academy, and where you're going to find valuable learning materials. So we'll leave the link to our Pirani Academy inside the chat. Nicole's going to add that in there for me. And then also we have a YouTube channel. So please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll leave the link in the chat as well. And yeah, and any questions that we may have, we can address them at the end of the webinar. And with that, I will hand it over back to Olga. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie, for the information. Right now, I want to give you some context about how we are talking about the framework that I bring today for you. First, this is the agenda of the webinar. First, we are talking about some introduction about the definition of some topics that could help to understand what is the purpose of this webinar. After that, we are write down about the framework that I bring today. That is NIST. This is a framework for cybersecurity risk management. We first we are talking about to the objectives, the framework components, and the functional categories that the framework gives us. Okay. In the final of the presentation, I want to show you how you could implement this kind of framework in your company and how Pirani help you with this implementation. Okay. This is like at least that the activity that we are talking about today. And for a start, I want to start with the definition of what is cybersecurity. This is something that helps us to understand what is the context of the framework, what is the purpose of the framework, what is the objectives of the framework, because all are focusing in the cybersecurity. Okay, this is one of the definition. I want have only one definition because I need to align with you to understand what I'm talking about when during the presentation. And this is one of the definition that you could find in any website about the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the art of protecting network, device, and data. This is the most important phrase in this definition. It's very easy. You what kind of things, what kind of activities, what kind of strategies you do for protect network, device, and data that in these days are very important for us and is the most important asset in your company right now. For what I want to protect this information, because maybe you could have from an authorization access or a criminal use. This is something that are right now is very common. You know that all days are increasing, the criminals, attackers with the cybersecurity of your company. For the reason you need to have the strategies and you need to have all the tools that to protect your company and your asset in your company. What do you want to protect about over this kind of assets? First is the confidentiality of the assets, integrity, and availability of the information. This is something that is very important, these three variables that explain you what do you want to protect in your company, okay? After that, I want to talk more about the origin of the framework and why this framework is very important for us. In In this date, you know that for the company, it's very important to protect all this information because we are in a environment, an ecosystem that all the activities in your company, the process, are relation with the technology, the cyberspace in many ways, and you are very connected with many people in the world, and you need to put your information in the cloud, or you need to connect with a different network or something like that. For the reason, every day is very important that you have very a good strategy about how you could control this and how you could protect your company about this. For that, many companies in the world are take advantage implementing a different kind of standard, like a 27001 and needs. That is the framework that I bring today. I will talking about this, what is the structure, what is the objectives, and how you could implement in your company, depending on the nature of your company, the objectives, and the purpose of your company. Okay. Um, I want to give you some topics about what is the origin of this. Okay, this framework is original to USA after the one execution order issued by the President Barack Obama in 2013. When this framework was developed, it was for the government agencies, but currently, NIS is being used as well for many startups and small business in the world. However, this kind of framework could be used in any kind of companies in the world. It doesn't matter if it's a small, larger, or I don't know, the size of the company could be a good way to start or to implement one strategy about the cybersecurity in your companies. Know this. I want to give you more information about what is the objective of the proposal of the NIST framework, what kind of comms you could obtain after you are implementing this kind of framework. First, you have three principal or main objectives for the framework. The first is risk management. The other is cybersecurity resilience and improvement of security capabilities in your company. These three objectives are very important for you and for your company to obtain more maturity in the cybersecurity risk management. Okay. First, you have the risk management. That is the primary objective of the NIST. This is something that helps you to facilitate effective process about risk management in your company. You know that in general, the risk manager have or involves three principal activities, that is identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks, cybersecurity risks. And why this is very important for us is because if you have a good risk management in your company, you could take a better decision in your company, and informed decision. That is something that is very important for us. The second is cybersecurity resilience. You know that in this date, we have a lot of change in the world. The technology are changing. We are exposed, for example, for conflict in the world. I don't know, the market are changing, the condition, the requirement of our client or customer are changing all days. For the reason, you need to have resilience in your company, and you need to be prepared for any of the changes that are happening right now in the world. This kind of framework help you to be resilient against to the change or the cyber threat in the world, and ensure that you could have the capabilities in your company to put a face in these cases. And then finally, we have improvement of cybersecurity capability. You know that all of this kind of framework give you a lot of strategies, give you a lot of guidance about how you could implement, how you could protect your assets. But remember that the most important thing is that you need to improve the capabilities in your company, not only technology, not only tools, not only devices that you could use for protect your information. You need to improve the capability of the people that work with you, the employees that you have in your company, because the people is the weakness slave of the chain when you are trying to protect your information or your assets in your company. For the reason you need to improve the technology capabilities, but you need to improve the capabilities in your employees or the people that work with you. Knowing these objectives in the NIST framework, I want to start and write down um, to more detail about how is the structure of the framework and what is the principal components of the framework and how you could understand this and how you could implement in your company. The first, okay, the three components or main component that the framework have are core, tiers, and profiles. Today, I am focusing in the first component that is core. This is the most important component in the framework because this give you the set of activities and strategies that you could implement in your company for have a good cybersecurity risk management and protect in good way all the assets that you have. This is like a part of the framework. The others, tiers and profile, help you for understand how you are in the framework. For example, in the case of the tiers, this is something that give you the like give you the possibility to make assess about how you are in front to the maturity of the framework. For example, what is the degree that you have or that you want to have when you are implementing this kind of framework, depending on if you are um, uh, taking all the activities that the framework give you, you could have more maturity in the level of the framework. And the other is profile. Profile give you the possibility to make a gap analysis about how you are right now and how you want to stay in the future when you are trying to implement all the activities that in this moment you doesn't have. Okay. Continue with this. I will try to explain each of the parts that the core have. I try to give more detail what kind of pieces the core have in the framework and give us for implemented this framework. This is the principal structure, and I want to start with this because it's better if we have a context how the framework work and how it is structured for better understand the framework. First, we have 5 functions. In this case, it's identify, protect, detect, response, and recover. Each of these functions have some categories that give more detail that how you could implement each of these functions. Give you the strategies or the tools or the controls that you could implement in your company. And each of these categories could have more details. These details are in subcategories. The framework have about 108 subcategories, yes, that give you a detail and examples that how could you implement this kind of framework. And finally, you could have an informative reference. What is this? This is something that help to understand how this framework is aligning with the other kind of framework. For example, COVID-5 or ISO 27001 or other kind of special publication that the needs give you to understand better how you could implement each of these categories subcategories in your company. Um, in this case, if you use this kind of reference, you could have more information or examples and give more detail about how you could implement each of these part of the framework. Understanding this, I want to start looking for each of the function that you have in the framework. We are start first understanding what is the purpose of each functions. And this is the like a heart. Remember that it's like a heart of the framework. Here we have identification, protect, deter, respond, and recover that I said before. Yes, look at that is like a cycle, and when you have like a steps, but the framework are very flexible. You could use the cycle first, start with the identification, after protect, detect, respond, recover. You could use this kind of like a process, but the framework give the opportunity to, if you want, you could say, okay, I want to start with detect or protect. Is not like mm, mandatory that you always take the framework in order. No, it depends that you want and what is the needs in your company. Okay, for me, I want to suggest that it's better if you try to go in order of the framework. It's better because you could have much maturity in the framework and easier to understand how you could implement this kind of framework in the company. Okay, and let's move on and go to the each functions and understand what is the purpose of each functions. First, I want to start with identify. Identify have the outcomes or the principal outcome of this function is know the assets and the process that you have in your company. This function give us the answer about this question: what process and assets need to protect? This is something that is very important because this is like the context about your company and what kind of need do you have talking about the cybersecurity. You know, what process do you want to protect? What kind of process are very critical for your company? What kind of assets are very critical in your company and you want to protect? This is the principal objective of this function. The function have 6 categories. Remember that in the last slide, I show you that you have identify and 6 categories, protect and other 6 categories. And each category give you more detail that how you could implement this function in your company. For this, you have, for example, assets management. What is this? When you are trying to understand what kind of process and assets do you have, you need to make a process to give you all information about the assets. For example, you could make an inventory that give all the information, for example, the name, the identification, the category of the assets. You could have, for example, the responsibles of the assets, where are the assets, what kind of assets is, for example, is a virtual access or is a physical asset, what is the purpose of these assets in my company. This is something that you need to prepare and you need to understand about how you could know this kind of process on assets. After that, you need to know about your business. What is the needs of the business? What is the objectives of the business? What is the purpose of the business? This is something that are very related with the assets that you have in your company. Normally, you buy or you have a license, you have a device or something like that because you need this for make or to do any process that you have in your company and achieve the objectives that you have in your company. You never have access because yes, no, you always have this because they have a specific purpose in your company. And in the second in the second category, that is business environment, you could do this. Yes, you understand what is the process that you have in your company, what is the relation with the assets that you have, and what is the purpose of this, and align with the strategy of the company, all the things that you have in your company. After that, you could have, for example, governance that give you context about what kind of compliance do you have in your company, what kind of policies do you have, internal policies that you have, or if you need to comply some regulation depending of the country that the company are, something like that. You need to understand this because this help you to understand the concept, the context of the business and the process and assets in your company. The other thing, and it's very, very important, is that the risk assessment and risk management. In this part of the framework, you should implement a process or a strategy for identify what kind of risks do you have in your company. And remember that in this case, when we are talking about cybersecurity, the risks are very related with the assets that you have in your company and the process that you have. For the reason, it's very important to know all the context about it. What is the assets, but what is the kind of exposition that you have when you have this kind of assets in your company. In this step, it's very important to have all the context and implement some standards or methodology for risk assessment and risk management. Okay, continue with this. I want to move on in the next functions, that is protect. This is something that is very related with the last functions, because here the outcome is understand what safeguards are available in your company. What is safeguard? What is the meaning of this? Is what kind of controls, what kind of strategies you have in your company to protect all the assets that you have. This is the part where you decide which control do you want to have. You could have some of controls, but you need to identify other controls that help you to protect the assets and information. When you are aware about what do you want, it's easier to identify how you could protect this kind of assets or information, data, or something like that. In this case, we have categories too. In this case, it's 6 category. What kind of category do you have? For example, access control. You know, you could have many kind of control to control the access in many ways to the access to information, to the, I don't know, the system, application, or something that you have in your company. The other thing, and for me it's very, very important, is awareness and training that help you to control the knowledge and the capabilities that the people in your company have. This is something that help you trying to understand, and the all people in the company understand the importance that the security have in your company. The other kind of thing is have like a maintains process, data security, information protection, another kind of strategy that could implement in your company to protect your assets. Needs in other kind of information or standard give you more detail about like a list of the control that you could implement. This NIST 853 is like a special publication that the NIST give you. It's not inside the principal framework that we are talking about today. It's something that can help you to understand what kind of control you could implement. It is more detail. It give you more detail about the control that you could implement. For example, in this case, you could identify that you want to have like contingency plans, you could have access control, media protection. For example, you could have the control in encrypting protection, or to multiple factor authentication, or I don't know, outing is a good control in your company. You could implement the process for outing in any process that you have in your company. And in this framework or this special publication, you could find all the details about the different kind of control that you could use depending on what of the natural or your organization or the needs that you have in your organization. This is something that you always need in mind, because it's something that helps you to understand what could be the better strategy of your company in this kind of definitions. Okay, after that we could talking about the detect functions. In this case, we need to answer for what techniques can identify incidents. This is something very important, because uh, you could have a lot of control in your company. You could understand what is the context of your company. You could have many protections in your company, but it's impossible to say that you eliminate or avoid all the risks that you have in your company. You know that could happen some incidents or some events that you can control. In this case, you need to have a plan to detect this kind of anomalies or events that could happen in your company. And this is the principal purpose of these functions. What do you want? What do you need to implement for this? For example, you could have a security information and event management that help you to handle all the events that you could have in your company, to understand, to analyze this kind of events that could happen in your company. The other kind of control or strategy that you could implement in your company's intrusion detection system. That is normally is a automatic control that try to detect when somebody that don't have authorization to access a specific access or in specific information are trying to access. The other thing is the SOC, that is Security Operations Center. This is something that like centralize all the information in many ways of the many assets that you have in your company. For example, in this kind of system, you could have log collection, reporting, research and development strategies for control many ways or detect many in many ways, different kind of incidents or anomalies that could happen. This kind of function help you to prevent or to know before the incident happen. But sometimes the incident happens and you need to do something to prepare your organization for this kind of thing, because it's impossible to control all the incidents or the action that could happen in our companies. In this case, you need to have a plan about the response. This is other function of the framework. Here, the objective of the outcome of this is the techniques that can contain impact of incidents. This kind of response could be mitigate the impact of the incident when they happen. The response is used when immediately the incident are happening, or I realize that the incident happened. This is something that help you to respond in short time and really quickly, because you know that when the incident happen, if you take much time to respond to much time to respond, the impact could be higher. You could have losses, economy losses, or reputational losses, many kind of things that could affect your business. The other thing that is very important here is that you could need you should be very, I don't know, how do you explain this? You need to be a good strategy about the communication with the different stakeholders that could be affected for the incidents. This is very important, because if you have a good communication, for example, the response could be better, the people could be take decision in a good way for the business. And this is on the principal characteristics that the response have in these functions. Continue with this, but with this idea, we have three type of I don't know, strategies that you could implement in this function. First is crisis management plan. That is something that is very important, because sometimes the incidents could affect many areas in the company and many process in the company, and sometimes the people don't know how their act about the incident are happening. And you need to give some instructions and rules to help the people handle the crisis. The other thing is maybe an incident response plan that give you the whole information that how you could handle this kind of situations. And finally, we have a recover. Recover is a function that give you the techniques about how you could restore the capabilities of your company, how you could restore the system, the assets, how you could give access to the information that maybe could be lost, how you restore all the capabilities of the company, of the areas that are affected for the incident. You know, in this case, it's very common and very known, the disaster recovery. This is something that give you the line and the guide about how you could restore the system, the application, give the access of the all information for the stakeholders that are impacted for the incidents. Okay, with this, we finish all the function that the framework have. And right now, I want to show you how Pirani help with this implementation and what kind of functionalities we have to help with the implementation of this framework. Remember that we have a free plan that you could use if you want, and try to follow the action that I will try to show you about how you could implement. Okay. Okay, wait a minute. I will try to share you the application. I don't know if somebody have any question or have uh, about the topic. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Olga, for the presentation. I hope that was very helpful for everybody. Right now, we're going to go into the demonstration of the information security risk management software. So she'll go over a couple of processes and show you how to get done. And then if you guys have any questions, please feel free to add them in the group chat. We'll go ahead and help answer the questions by the end of the webinar. And please, also don't forget to sign up for our surveys at the end of the webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to always reach out to myself or Olga. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Hmm.
Steph.
You're welcome.
Okay, continue with the demonstration. I want to show you. Uh, I focus on in the two first step or first function that the framework gives us, that is identify and protect. Because we don't have enough time today for show all the functions, but I will try to show you how you could use the Pirani software for implement this function. First, you remember that the first function was identify, and we told that in this function you need to understand or realize what kind of process, what kind of assets do you have in your company. For this, in Pirani, you have two models. That the first is process, and the second is information assets. In here, you could make a list all of the process that you have in your company and the assets that you have. For this, you could create, for example, we could start with the process. You could create all the process that you have in your company. What kind of information do you need? Obviously, the name. Yes, for example, in this case, we could use, I don't know if somebody want to give some suggestion about some critical process that you have in your company or something like that. I don't know if somebody give examples. No? Any examples? Okay. For example, I don't know, maybe marketing could be a marketing or commercial process in your company could be a good example. After you said the name of the process, you could decide what type all processes are mission, strategy, and supporting. Is depend of the purpose of this process. In this case, for example, is like a supporting process. For example, the other thing that you need to set is what is the category. This category help you with the hierarchy of the process. You could have macro process, process, and sub process. For example, in this case, could be a macro process is a high level in the structure of your process, and you could decide if you want to describe in more detail what is the purpose of the process. For example, what is the scope, where is the activities that this process has, something like that, is in more detail to understand better the process. The other thing that I said you is that you need to know what is the responsibles of the process. In this case, you have the association section in the software that you could use this to identify what is the responsible of this. In this case, for example, could be marketing team. You can select, and you have the responsible of this process. The other thing that you could do in this step on this model is to identify the assets and the risks that the process have. Before that, I want to show you how you could identify the assets. And after that, I could associate or to relate process and assets that you have in your company. In this case, you could go to the information asset. And in this model, in the same that the process, you could create any kind of asset that you have. For this, you could go to the create assets. And this is the form that you could need to file out. And in this case, you need a name too. For example, in this case, I don't know, maybe we could have the customer database. I don't know, maybe the list of the customer that you have in your company. The other thing that is very, very important for the identification of the assets is qualify or assess the criticality of the asset. You know, this is something that help you to prioritize what kind of assets are most important for you or could affect most any process in your company. And for this, we have three principal variables, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For each of these variables, you need to decide, knowing your assets, identify what kind of criticality have each of these variables. In this case, for example, customer, if we are talking about the customer database, maybe you say, okay, this information is very critical, and this information is confidentially, because you have all the personal information about your customer, maybe, or the information of the organization or something like that. You need to protect this information, and could be a high level of the criticality, talking about the confidentiality. After that, you could go to integrity. In this case, you need to decide, for example, in this case, law say that the integrity of this asset is not fundamental for the organization. I think if you are talking about the customer information, is this could be no law, because this information is very important. You use in many processes in your company, and is necessary for do anything that you have in your company. Medium tell us that the asset is relevant for the proper functions. Okay, in this case, for example, you are talking about the marketing process. They need a lot of information of the clients, of the prospect, of the leads that you have in your company. And finally, we have hire, that is fundamental role in the organization. In this case, in my case, I say that maybe could be higher, because this information is very relevant for us, and you need and you use in many ways in your company. And finally, availability depends of the organization. There's no all the organization is the same. You need to know the context about it, but because take a better decision. In this case, could be medium. I don't know. Maybe if you don't have the information of the clients for a moment, could be is no very critical for you. In this case, could be say that is medium. Using this kind of assets of your assets, as assets, you could have the criticality criticality of the assets, that help you to prioritize what kind of assets are most important for you. The other thing that you need to file out is what type of assets is this. In this case, it's a customer device. Maybe it could be a software, a hardware, a people, service, network. In this case, could be hardware. And what more? Maybe you could give more information about the purpose of the assets, where are these assets, or I don't know, more information that give you more context about this. Right now, we could relate or associate with the process. Remember that we create a list of process that we have in our company. In this case, for example, in our example is marketing. I can select this and relate with the assets. This is something very important, because when you realize what is the relation between the assets and the process, if the assets could be affected for any incident, you know that the process could be affected too. And in this way, it's very useful if you know the relation between the process and us. The other thing that you could realize or identify in the assets is the threat and vulnerability, and finally, the risk. What is important to know what kind of threat or vulnerability the assets have is because with this, you could understand what kind of controls or what kind of risks could you have for this asset in your company. For example, in this case, some threats that we could have in this kind of assets could be, I don't know, maybe it's somebody try to access to this information. For example, trading to to rob the information for your company or to damage or make damage in the information of your customer information or something like that is something that could affect you and could be a risk if you don't have a control for this. The other thing is vulnerabilities. In this case, you could have, for example, I don't know, you don't have a control access for the database, or you don't have a firewall, or you don't have any kind of control for control the access of this information. This could affect the information that are in this server on this in this asset. Go to for this, you could create any threat or vulnerability that you could have for these assets. In this case, for example, I don't know, maybe looking for some of the vulnerabilities that you have right now, maybe an authorization access that I tell you, I could select. Or if you want, you could create if this is not in the software or is not in the information. For this, you only need to decide what kind of tag is threat or vulnerability, take a put a name, and finally, you could give the description of this vulnerability or threat. Okay. Finally, with this, we could create the assets, and you could do the same for any asset that you have in your company. You need to relate with any kind of process in your company. And finally, continue with the identify function. You could identify all the risks that you could have for this asset and process that you identified before. In this case, I want to show you how you could identify. For example, in this case, I don't know, I have a risk. The risk, what kind of information need to identify is the name. For example, in this case, is information security breach, for example. The risk of an authorization access could be is no is the risk is an authorization asset or theft the sensitive information of the customer, for example. And when you are looking for the risks, you need to assess the risks, about two variables, the principal variables, impact and likelihood. The impact is what is the consequence of the risk when the risks are happening or are materialized. What is the impact of the process or the assets that you have related with these risks. In this case, you could decide if it's minor, significant, serious, critical, catastrophic. In this case, we have critical because it's very important for us to protect the customer information, for example. And the other variable is likelihood. In this case, is the same. You need to decide, depending of the information or the risks that you are identifying, what kind of level the likelihood have. You know, in this case, maybe it could be possible or unlikely, very likely, almost certainly, depending of the what kind of control do you have, what kind of assets do you have. All of this is something that give you more information how you could decide what is the likelihood of the assets. Here you could describe more information about the risks, and you could associate each risk with the process and the assets that you identified before. In this case, will be marketing. In this case, is ready, the association. But if you want to select or to associate with other kind of process, is okay. You can select where you want. And you could select the assets. In this case, for example, we are talking about the customer database. I could go to the association section and select the customer device. And with this, you have all the information that the identified need or have in the framework. You have all the process that you have in your company, the assets, and what kind of risks do you have in your company. For the second function, that is detect, you need to identify what control do you have in your company. For this, we have a control section or control models that have all the control that you could have in your company, or you have in your company for protect the assets and the process in your company. In this case, for example, I have one example here, is two-factor authentication. In this case, we have some information to identify this control. First is the name. After, you need to evaluate this control into variable that is design, execution, and execution. And the control of the design could be to help you to understand the characteristics of your control. For example, control type execution. If this control execute repeatedly, it is document. Is there any evidence? Some of these are categories like a physical or design characteristics that the control have. And when you are looking or evaluate each of these characteristics, you could understand or realize how robust is the control. Depending the rules of the control, robustness of the control is the control that you are putting to that different assets and different process that could you have in your company. If you have a good robustness of all those controls, could be better mitigation of the risks and better protection of the assets and process in your company. And finally, we have the execution that evaluate the effectiveness of the control. That the design could be very good, and I don't know, have a good robustness about the design. But when you are executing the control, maybe this control don't have a good response, and the mitigation is not very good. And for this thing, it's very important that you have the evaluation with design and the execution of the control. Those variables are very important to understand how robust is the control. You could give some description, and you could decide what more information do you want to give for identify the controls. And here you could associate with the risks that we identified before. For example, in this case, I have here the risk that I used before, that is information security breach, about the sensitive customer data that we have in the customer database. And in this case, you could decide if the control help you to mitigate the impact or the likelihood of the risks. What is the difference? Because when you are talking about the mitigation of impact, you are talking about that if the incident happened, you could mitigate the consequence of the risks of the incidents, you know. And when you are talking about likelihood, more like you try to prevent or to mitigate the possibility of the incident happen, you know. In this case, if you are talking about, for example, in two-factor authentication, this kind of control help us with the likelihood. No, the impact is more like help us with the mitigation of likelihood, because this control is a preventive control, and it's something that try that the incident doesn't happen. And you could relate this control with the asset. In this case, we are talking about the database, customer database. We select here and we have the relation, and you could, after that, have all the information about what kind of controls our assets have. Yes. And finally, all the control need to have a responsible, because it's something that help you to handle and to understand what happened with this control. Who are the responsible of the actions, or the evaluation or assessment about each control that you have in your company. With these three module, we are covered all the categories that we have in the framework for the two first function, that is identify and protect. The other function obviously are covered for Pirani, but today we don't have enough time to show you. But in the next webinar, we could have the opportunity to tell about this and to understand why these functions are very important for your company and how you could implement it in your company. And that's it. I don't know, Stephanie, if we have any question or something like that.
Yeah, we did. Here. Actually, we got one here from Alberto. He says, how can we determine the critically of information assets? Are they established by residual risk, or should they be determined from a business continuity perspective? Here, let me,
Okay, could you repeat, please?
yeah, hold on one second. Okay. So he's basically asking, how can you determine if it's critical for the information assets, and if we're able to establish the residual risk, or should that be determined from a business continuity perspective?
Okay, this is a good question. Okay, the criticality of the assets, if you remember, we are talking about that we have three variables, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Yes, this is the first, the principles variables that you could use. And it's very important to understand what is the purpose of these assets in your company, and what kind of process could be affected if some incidents or events could happen in these assets. Yes, and this is something relation more like a business continuity perspective, not like other residual risks, because you need to understand if something happened, what kind of impact or consequence could you have, could you have, and how these kind of things or consequence affect the business continuity of your company. You know, this is something that help you to understand how you could decide, how you could evaluate or to assess the assets in your company. You know,
Okay,
and have
I think that was
more
it.
questions.
Let me see. No, it looks like that was it. Hold on, we got one. Okay, he got it. Cool. Well, I'm glad that Olga was able to clear that up for you. Everyone, we have come of time. I really, really appreciate Olga and I appreciate you taking the time to sit here and watch our webinar. And if you have any questions, please, you can always reach out to us. You can email me personally if you'd like. And then also at the end of this webinar, there's going to be a short survey. If you guys could please fill out the survey, that'll help tremendously for our webinar efforts. And yeah, we hope to see you in the next risk management school webinar. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
Olga. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.